What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports here to give you the edge for this NFL Week 10 slate on DraftKings. Cannot wait to break it down. Before we dive into the slate, guys, just want to give a quick medical update. I feel like I have to do this on every single genre of sports video that we do. Did it for NBA, did it for MMA. For anybody who watches just our NFL content, you probably didn't see me come out with the announcement that I have been having some medical issues the past week or so. So if you are watching this for the first time, no worries. I am recovering. I do have Bell's palsy, so the right side of my face does not work right now. It is numb from about here to here. I just can't feel it. It should go away, in about a week or two, hopefully sooner. But nonetheless, that's what I'm dealing with right now, so I do apologize if some of my words seem like they're not coming out right. If it seems like I'm slurring my words, I promise I'm not drunk. It's just because I'm literally numb from here to here, and I just can't help it. So I am getting better. I couldn't talk at all about a week and a half ago. Now I can talk a little bit, obviously. Hopefully you guys stay and watch this entire video, and that doesn't upset you too much. But let's go ahead and go over this NFL Week 10 slate. I have with me Fantasy Cruncher, the Fantasy Cruncher tool that we are partnered with. If you guys want to sign up for Fantasy Cruncher, head down to the link in the description below. If you sign up for a $30 package, you get a $20 voucher to any Fantasy Cruncher product. Huge benefit just being a part of the DGF community. One of the things we always preach, one of the tools we always use is Fantasy Cruncher, and we teach you how to become better DFS players. Whether you're an MME player, a single entry player, a cash player, this appeals to everybody. And I have different strategy videos on our YouTube channel if you guys want to learn how to become a better DFS player. I have been profitable over the past 3 years, every single year, so I do know what I'm doing. I like to think I do anyway, for the most part. Some years better than not, but for the most part, I feel like I do. And you do need advanced tools, whether it is Fantasy Cruncher, whether it's another optimizer, but Fantasy Cruncher is by far the best tool in the industry. And there's so much flexibility you guys can have with Fantasy Cruncher. You can literally set stacks, advanced settings. I can go into these. I can spend hours talking about all these. You can group players together that have positive correlation, all kinds of things. You can even set up your own projection tab. I mean, there's so many things that you can do here with this tool. So let's go ahead and go over the slate as a whole, though, for you beginner watchers here, and I'll give you my favorite picks here for the slate, and I'll explain why, going position by position. So if we start at the quarterback position and look at the ownership, again, in terms of ownership, I like to look at the highest owned and see what the public is thinking and why that is. So Dak Prescott here at $6,900 looks to be the highest owned quarterback at 12.3%. He has an industry projection average of 21, which is pretty high. And it makes sense here because of the matchup versus Atlanta, one of the worst against opposing quarterbacks. So I do like that matchup. $6,900 is also pretty cheap when comparing him to another higher owned guy, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady. He is cheaper than all those guys, which makes a lot of sense, and that explains his ownership here. Before I started this video, I crunched 500 lineups, set the randomness on 5,000% just to see kind of how builds are coming together here. And it gives me a good idea of what to expect at the quarterback position. And what I saw is that you might not necessarily need to land on Dak Prescott to save your salary. It looks like your salary savings are coming from the wide receiver, running back, and possibly even the tight end position. So you can pay for some of these stud guys, and I do think that's the route I'm going to go. And I'm going to probably go with somebody like Josh Allen. I know Josh Allen burned a lot of people last week. He dropped 12.56 versus my elite Jaguars defense here. I'm probably going to end up going back to, I think that's more of an outlier performance for the Jaguars defense than it is for Josh Allen. Again, he only scored 6 total points there. The Jaguars beat them 6-9. Nice. So Josh Allen at $7,900 against a horrible Jets defense, possibly even worse than the Jags. Should get it done there. Has a very high ceiling. The industry tends to agree here. 25 is the highest projection on the slate by far at the quarterback position. Next highest is going to be Tom Brady, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But 25 is a pretty good projection here for Josh Allen. That's what he was projected for against the Jaguars last week. So I do like him here at $7,900. I think he is by far the safest option on the slate. I know I said that last video, but I really do think it here against the Jets. And then we'll go ahead and round off the top 3 here with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is another quarterback I do like. In terms of overall upside, I think he's right there with with Dak Prescott, and it looks like the industry does agree. Both projected for exactly 21 points. I do think Justin Herbert has a little bit more upside because I see this being a more competitive matchup. I feel like Minnesota's always in very competitive matchups here. And right now, it's the highest over-under on the slate at 53.5. So I really do like Justin Herbert here at $7,300. Feel like he's in a smash spot. Potentially could drop a ceiling game here at 21 fantasy points. I think he's my favorite option in terms of comparing him to Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's going to be third on my pecking order. I do like Josh Allen the most out of these quarterbacks, and I personally think I'm going to be paying up for him, but I don't hate any three of these quarterbacks at all. So now let's take it a step further here and go ahead and look at the exposures that I had here. Josh Allen came out the most, and that makes sense. He has the highest projection, comes in with the highest price tag, and it's very easy to land on them here at $7,900. There's really no reason why you shouldn't. So I do agree. I think Josh Allen is your cash quarterback. Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott, we talked about them. So the ownership here does make sense in terms of line of construction. One guy that does stand out to me here, and a lot of people are going to be off of this week, is going to be Jalen Hurts. I think he's a great GBP consideration, and obviously makes for some very awkward builds. He's also only showing 3.3% ownership. So it looks like some people here are going to be pulling off of the Jalen Hurts train against the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos do well against opposing quarterbacks. However, they let up a lot of passing yards at the same time. So Jalen Hurts, at very low ownership, I do like that. He makes for a very awkward build and is projected at 20 fantasy points right now, according to the industry. And as you can see, that is higher than some of these higher owned guys like Matt Ryan. I get that he's cheaper, but still has more sheer upside. Kirk Cousins projected only 18. Big Ben projected about 16 points. So just going down the list here, Tom Brady makes a lot of sense. I think he's also going to be one of the higher owned quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, again, depending on how his shoulder feels, he was limited in practice. I don't know if he's going to actually play. His industry average is sitting at 21 right now. They're not going to update his industry projection probably until they know what his status is going to be before kickoff. He is $8,000, so he's definitely the highest price guy here on the slate in terms of quarterbacks. So talk about contrarian if he is ready to go. I think he makes for another decent GBP option here. And then scrolling all the way down here to the bottom, it looks like Kirk Cousins at 4%. I talk about him every single week being a under the radar type of player. It looks like he's not really fitting too many builds. It looks like not too many people are going to be landing on him. So if he does get in yet another shootout game, I do like him here at a very low 4.2% ownership, and does come out to an 18-point projection. So right now, in terms of GBPs, I'm probably going to prioritize Kirk Cousins, Jalen Hurts, and honestly, probably going with A-Rod here a little bit lower on the list here at 4% of my build. So it looks like he's also not fitting into the builds very, very well here. Let me actually look at his exact ownership. Yeah, coming in at 3.2% ownership. So just to kind of recap the quarterback position here, we have Dak Prescott, who's going to be the highest owned. I do tend to agree with that. I think Josh Allen's the best overall QB on the slate, projected at 25 fantasy points. And then Justin Herbert are going to be my favorite cash quarterbacks. To prioritize some GPP guys, I do like Kirk Cousins, Jalen Hurts, and Aaron Rodgers. Now let's move over to the running back position. This one is very, very straightforward. We have D'Ernest Johnson here, the highest owned on the slate. I think he's the highest owned player on the slate. He is at 4.7K, 26.4% ownership, and that's because Nick Chubb was ruled out a couple days ago, along with Felton. So it looks like D'Ernest Johnson is in for a full workload. He's gotten it before, and he's smashed his value every single time he has gotten that. 27.8 points against the Denver Broncos. Really do like this. This is the most obvious play on the slate. Save some salary. You're getting a running back one workload, and in a very efficient offense with a good offensive line. Next on the list is going to be Najee Harris at 21% ownership. And in our first look video, we actually talked about Najee Harris at $7,900. He's just overall the best play on the slate in terms of volume, in terms of matchup, in terms of upside. I think that this makes a lot of sense. If you can pay up for Najee Harris, which I think your build will allow you to do, showing at a 20-point projection, which is actually the highest on the slate. Yep, that's the highest on the slate, tied for the highest on the slate. I really do like him here. It makes a lot of sense at 21% ownership. I feel like that's one of the safest options here on the slate. Next on the list, Cordero Patterson at $6,600, showing 19% ownership. This I actually don't agree with. I think the ownership's a little bit too high here for Cordero Patterson. That had been kind of off the train the entire season. It's kind of bit me in the butt. Right now, his industry average though is at 15 fantasy points. When you compare that to the other players around him, Austin Eckler, 18, Jonathan Taylor, 20, Dalvin Cook, 19, Leonard Fournette at 15, which is the exact same amount, and also for cheaper. So for me, it doesn't look like it makes too much sense for that ownership to kind of, come to the front here at 19% ownership. Really don't believe him being the top 3 owned. If I'm going to make a pivot off of them, I'm going to somebody like Austin Eckler, and Jonathan Taylor has a way better matchup against my Jacksonville Jaguars. So now let's go ahead and confirm confirm this with our projections and how the lineups come together. One thing you should not be paying attention to is Christian McCaffrey here, the highest exposed in all my lineups here at 25%. I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think he is going to be in for a huge day. I don't know if he's going to get a full workload yet, and that is because he came back last week, and he doesn't have an industry projection right now. So I think the default is like 26 points, which is a bit high for him. Let's see what his projection is right now. Yeah, 26. So I don't think that projection makes a lot of sense right now. I will adjust that in my own notes. But right now, Christian McCaffrey showing the highest owned, or the most exposed. I do think he's a good GBP option. I just definitely wouldn't prioritize him in cash. But D'Ernest Johnson is by far going to be the highest exposed running back in a lot of builds. You're just don't fade him in cash. You can completely fade him in GBPs if you think that's a sharp play, and I do think that's a sharp play. But play him for small GBPs, play him for cash. Don't fade him, please. Don't be that guy. You're not that guy, pal. I promise you. 18% in terms of exposure. I'm showing next on the list here is going to be Swift and then Najee Harris. I want to talk about Swift. So Swift was one of my favorite GBP options here earlier in the week. Is showing a 17 fantasy point industry average at 6.8K. I do think if they're going to keep it close here with Pittsburgh, they're going to have to go through DeAndre Swift. I don't think there's any argument that he is the best option on that team, and they do throw the ball to him a lot. Like him in terms of PPR upside all the time. So against Pittsburgh here at $6,800, he's fitting a lot of the builds. It does have a decent high projection there in terms of the industry. But just going down the list here and some of my other favorite options, I do consider Jonathan Taylor a decent option. If it wasn't for his price tag, I'd be all over him. I think he's a fantastic pivot. I think he's going to be more of a GPP play just because he's a little bit lower down the list. For cash, I wouldn't prioritize him. I still think you go D'Ernest Johnson, Najee Harris, and then probably Austin Eckler in that order. But still, it's a very straightforward path to victory here in terms of cash. D'Ernest Johnson and Najee Harris are going to be by far my favorite options. Going down the list here, Dalvin Cook did get a full workload last week. I think he can even get a bigger workload this week. He only got 3 receptions out of the backfield for 17 carries. The coaches were saying he could get 20 plus carries going forward. Really don't see any hesitation there in a very competitive matchup versus the Chargers. He's probably one of my favorite overall GBP options on the slate. I really do like him. Another guy flying under the radar here is going to be James Conner with Arizona. He is the wide receiver. He's the running back one here in this offense without Edmonds in the starting lineup. Obviously, he's been out with an injury. So James Conner at $6,300. I don't mind him. Has a lot of upside, only showing 10.2% ownership, and he's also popping up in a lot of my builds. Another guy that's kind of flying under the radar that's popping up in a lot of my builds as well is going to be Mark Ingram, who's starting for Kamara. Did start for him last week, and let's actually take a look at some of his stats. Got the ball 9 times for 43 yards in the loss there last week. He's showing 8.5% ownership. So yes, this is definitely going to be more of a GPP target. I don't think the raw upside is going to be there against Tennessee, but he's still showing a 13.5 fantasy point projection at a 4.5K price tag. So I really do like the value there that you're getting from Mark Ingram. The one thing about Mark Ingram is he was targeted out of the backfield, so you got to love that for PPR upside as well. And then after that, I'm really not in love with too many of these other options. I could go really deep into some bigger GPPs, but those are my favorite overall options on the slate. Another piece of injury news that came in while I was making this video was that Damian Harris is actually ruled out for the Patriots. Don't know if it's going to auto update here in Fantasy Cruncher, and it looks like it's still not updated, so he's still showing a projection. I went and updated Brandon Bolden's projection to 10. I think that's pretty safe at $4,400. I don't think he's going to take priority over Mark Ingram. I do think Mark Ingram has a little bit more upside just because we know how the Patriots backfield works historically. But if Stevenson is ruled out, then yes, I do have a lot more love here in Bolden. Right now, he is questionable, but that's another decent GPP option here at 2.3% ownership. I do expect that to go up just a little bit. And then we have the wide receiver position, the position that we always spend like 2 hours talking about. And just like the running back position, there's a very obvious path to victory here, a very obvious lineup construction, and that is to get Davante Adams into your lineup at all costs because Aaron Rodgers is back and they are playing the Seattle Seahawks, who historically does not have a good secondary. So Davante Adams' ownership projection at 21.1% ownership does make sense. He has an industry average projection of 18 points, which I do believe is the highest in terms of wide receivers, and it is. So Davante Adams at 7.9K, I definitely love him. I think you kind of need him in your lineup, especially in cash. I do think his ownership is going to be a little bit higher, especially with all the value there at that running back position. Next on the list is going to be Keenan Allen. It seems like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen has swapped places. Earlier in the season, it was the Mike Williams show. now. Lately, it has been the Keenan Allen show. Technically, he's dealing with a lingering knee injury. I don't think that impacts him too much. But Mike Williams has been dealing with that hamstring injury. That's really been hindering him. So it looks like Justin Herbert has been relying more on Keenan Allen, and his fantasy point projection right now is at 17 points, which I do believe is pretty accurate. Keenan Allen is another guy I feel like you should start your builds with here at 7K. Not all the way, but as a pay-up option, and it's not going to kill your bankroll here when building a lineup. Some other noteworthy guys here in terms of ownership are going to be Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman. Chris Godwin is playing without Gronk still, so another beneficiary there in that wide receiver core. But what I want to do is take a look at my lineup construction, go all the way down here and look at my exact exposures to see who kind of pops. And again, I do have the industry averages, so this should be pretty accurate based on what the public is thinking. Cole Beasley is showing very, very heavily exposed in my lineup. So let's actually take a look at Cole Beasley. What is his ownership here at $5,200? Looks like it's going to be about 11.8% owned. Now, I don't have an industry average in here, but it does make sense. 5.2K going against the Jets, going to be a very safe option. Has been getting a decent amount of targets. 9, 13, 11. Again, that is without Knox. He's still questionable. So if he does play without Knox again, I do think that Cole Beasley is definitely a viable option here in cash. Another paydown option that's going to be appearing in my builds a lot, Deontay Johnson besides him at $6,800, is going to be Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman seems like a more obvious play as of right now, and he's not really pending any injury news that's going to affect him. So at $6,300, has also been getting some consistent targets here and does have a very good matchup against my Jacksonville Jaguars. 6, 15, and 4 targets the past 3 games. Just been very, very consistent, and that's another mid-range option I do consider cash viable with decent amount of upside. Some other guys that are appearing in a lot of my builds that are flying under the radar, Tyler Lockett. That will be crazy to see him finally go off. I mean, he's been in such a slump, with the exception of my Jaguars, who just stink. So I do like Tyler Lockett. Again, should be carrying not so much ownership there against the Green Bay Packers. Him and DK Metcalf showing in 13% of the build. So those guys are going to be flying under the radar a bit. I do like a nice CL stack there for some upside. Stephon Diggs showing in a lot of my builds. Same thing with Keenan Allen, KJ Osborne, DJ Moore, Jarvis Landry. Again, I can keep naming some guys, but let me just go down the list with some of my favorite overall options. I do like DK Metcalf. Industry average, again, is around 15 points. For a 6.8K price tag, I really do like that. It's now moved up to 16 points, so just let that sink in. I do like him here at 6.8K, a decent salary saver and a tremendous upside there against Green Bay. Mike Williams, this is the time to take a stab on Mike Williams when the ownership is low. He's still getting consistent targets. I mean, look at this consistency. He's gotten 5 targets the past 3 games and 2 receptions in those exact same games. So I expect a ceiling game at some point for Mike Williams, and might as well take advantage of the ownership right now at 6.6% ownership. And then last but not least, I just keep talking about DJ Moore. He's still getting the targets. His quarterbacks stink. Looks like PJ Walker's going to be throwing to him this week. Hopefully something changes. He's still the wide receiver 1 in that offense, but against Arizona at 6.3K, I do like the low ownership on DJ Moore. Then now let's move over to the tight end position. This is a very interesting position to talk about because we had Pat Freiermuth showing the most ownership there for a while, but that was based on the assumption that Eric Ebron was going to be rolled out here. Let's actually take a look at Ebron's status. Right now, he does not have it anymore. He is active. Practice in full on Thursday, so he is ready to go. What is that going to do to Pat's production here? At 9.1% owned, he's still the 3rd highest on the slate. Right now, we have, this is the industry average of 6.89 points. So comparing that to what he's been doing, he's been an absolute beast. That's why he was carrying the ownership here early on in the week. 12.8, 14.4, and 21.3 points. So right now, looks like the industry is pulling off of Pat. I am as well. That 3.9K price tag is going to be hard to pay off for a guy that's going to be sharing a lot of targets there with Ebron. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with these tight ends going forward, because it looks like Pat has emerged as a notable tight end number 1 there for the offense. Ebron also has some talent, so again, it'll be very interesting to see what they do going forward. I am going to avoid him probably this week at 3.9K, just because I don't know what's going to happen with them. I'd much rather go to some tight end number 1s and some offenses I know are going to throw to him. Kyle Pitts being that guy, he's getting 7 targets, 6 and 8 the past 3 weeks. Definitely love that. I know he hasn't turned them into really that much, but at least he's getting targets, okay? So that's one thing I can guarantee with Kyle Pitts, who's showing the highest owned on the slate. I don't think that continues, but Dan Arnold, finally, I get to talk about a Jacksonville Jaguar here. 14.8 and 10 points the past 2 weeks. He's also getting consistent targets, and they're going to need him here versus the Indianapolis Colts on the road because they will be playing from behind. Right now, they are 10-point underdogs. So, industry average of 8.5 points. They do consider Dan Arnold a nice value play here. And I also consider him a nice value play, showing the second highest owned in terms of ownership at 11.7%. And then after that, another guy I want to talk about here is going to be Dallas Goedert at 4.7K. He's also showing a decent industry average of 11 points. He's showing up in a lot of my builds, and I feel like I've played Dallas Goedert the past 3 weeks, and he's paid off. I don't mind Dallas Goedert yet again. I think he's a fantastic price tag here at 4.7K. He only has to get to about 9 points to cover that. He's hit that 2 of the past 3 weeks, and again, should be a relatively competitive matchup here versus Denver. They're going to be looking to him early and often. So again, showing in 9% of my builds. Same thing with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is showing 12, Hawkinson showing 8, and then Njoku at 7. As you can see here, no Pat in 3% of my builds. So, and looks like Eric Ebron's also showing in some of my builds. So at the tight end position, this is going to be the one time where I'm not paying all the way down probably, unless I'm landing on somebody like Dan Arnold. But, you know, Kyle Pitts does make sense. Same thing with Dallas Goedert and TJ Hawkinson, who are also showing decently low owned. And last but not least, we have the defenses here. Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans and why they are going to be the obvious paydown here against New Orleans. We know that Jameis Winston is no longer there playing quarterback, so they have a projection of 20.5 points against the Tennessee Titans, 11.5% owned. Looks like a very safe paydown option, and the defense is always a position you're going to be paying down for. If you're not paying down for the Tennessee Titans, it looks like the Colts are appearing in a lot of my a ton of my builds here against my Jacksonville Jaguars at $3,600. So yeah, that looks like the obvious play if you're going to be paying up because my Jags stink. But yeah, I honestly hate talking about defenses, so I won't do that any longer. Let's now talk about lineup construction. I'm going to build a lineup based on my projections right now. And again, we are pending some injury reports. Let's go ahead and lock in a couple guys who I think should be in your cash and small GPPs. Again, probably not going to build an entire lineup for you, but I am going to start by locking in a few players and see what my my projections give me. So I'm locking in Johnson. I'm locking in Najee Harris. And at the quarterback position, I think I'm going to lock in Josh Allen. At the tight end position, do you know what? Let's go. Now, let's start at the wide receiver position. Let's go Pittman, and I am going to lock in Cole Beasley. I do like Cole Beasley to save me some salary. And let's see what that gives me. And actually, let's lock in the Tennessee Titans. I pretty much locked in 6 players, so that's a lot of players. What does that give me? That gives me a nice looking lineup here with KJ Osborne, Conklin, and McCaffrey. Yeah, let's not play McCaffrey. Let's actually get him out of my player pool because he's not safe right now. Yeah, let's get him out, and let's crunch again. That leaves me with KJ. I don't know why they like the Minnesota Vikings so much. And Jonathan Taylor is the last piece. And again, that's 49.5. But you guys get the drill. If I was building a lineup right now, this would be a very chalky build, in my opinion. You got to start your builds with De'Aaron Johnson, Najee Harris, and Cole Beasley. Come back with the Titans also. I might end up getting off of some of these wide receivers depending on what the injury reports do say. We know that leading up through lock, everything does change. And again, we have our updated industry averages on our website. If you guys want to sign up for dgfantasy.com, $30 membership gives you that $20 voucher on Fantasy Cruncher. The $20 membership gives you everything that you need to succeed in DFS without Fantasy Cruncher. Our projections, our ownership projections, my favorite cash plays. You guys can literally sort by your favorite cash plays. Actually, I'm going to show you guys that right now. So right now, if I go over to the NFL cheat sheet, wait for it to load, I can give you guys a core now by just clicking this radio button. It gives you a nice core, and again, this will change. Like you see here, Pat was in my core earlier on in the week. Gives you TJ's core, who you probably didn't load in, and then some double up plays sorting by ownership, and it gives you guys a nice player pool here. And you can also sort by position, find the highest owned guys, find the best GPP plays by sorting by leverage and all that good stuff. So our cheat sheets, again, are only $20 a month for every single sport. This is for NBA, for NFL, for NHL, esports, all that good stuff. Everything we cover is on our website for a very low price. But that will wrap up my video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course, smash that like button for all of our future NFL content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.